The Galactic Council Chamber, an imposing hall of marble, glowing energy panels, and far too many unnecessarily grandiose banners, was packed to capacity. Hundreds of alien representatives sat in their respective floating pods, murmuring in a symphony of condescension and bureaucratic nonsense. The Galactic Committee for Interstellar Affairs had gathered for what they assumed would be a routine hearing. They were, of course, very wrong. At the center of it all stood Sergeant Major Doug Deadshot Harrington, hands in his pockets, chewing, an old toothpick like he was waiting for his number to be called at the DMV. A battered sniper rifle slung lazily over his shoulder, his uniform looked like it had survived not just battles, but also several unfortunate laundry cycles. His boots had clearly seen more combat than most of the generals in the room. General Zorgath, the Magnificent, loomed over a floating podium, adjusting his many medals that served as proof he had successfully attended countless meetings. A towering lizard man with the nervous energy of someone who had just realized they might have parked illegally, Zorgath cleared his throat and addressed the chamber. "We gather today," Zorgath announced, puffing out his chest, "to determine whether the human species is an asset to galactic security or a threat to it." Doug blew a lazy puff of air from his lips. "Oh boy, here we go." The murmuring grew louder. Some species clicked their mandibles in displeasure. Others waved their tentacles, like they were about to file official complaints. The Zarkon ambassador, a floating jellyfish-like entity, shuddered in fear at the very sight of a human in military gear. Zorgath gestured grandly. "The case is clear. The human military has, time and time again, defied strategic logic. Their tactics, if one can even call them that, are erratic, reckless, and above all, disturbingly effective. How do they keep winning wars without a coherent doctrine?" A robotic drone floated forward and projected a hologram. Footage of a past battle played out in front of them. Alien legions marched in perfect, rehearsed formations. Then the humans showed up, half of them wearing mismatched gear, one guy in sunglasses and flip-flops, and a sniper eating a sandwich mid-shot. The battle was a disaster. For the aliens. The footage zoomed in on Doug, lying back in a hammock he had somehow set up in a war zone. He casually lifted his sniper rifle, took a shot without looking, and sent an enemy mech spiraling into a crater. Gasps filled the chamber. Zorgath pointed an accusatory claw at him. "You, how do you explain this?" Doug tilted his head. Gravity? That was an impossible shot," Zorgath fumed. "No one aims that well." Doug scratched his chin. "Well, in fairness, I wasn't really aiming." The room exploded in horrified chatter. "That is precisely the problem," Zorgath roared. "Humans do not follow the rules of engagement. Their tactics make no sense. Their training regimens are chaotic. They take naps in the middle of firefights. And—" Zorgath gestured wildly to the footage, which now showed a human soldier dual-wielding an assault rifle and a hot dog. "That man is eating lunch mid-battle." Doug squinted at the E screen. "Oh, hey, that's Vasquez. Good guy. Real handy in a bar fight." Zorgath slammed his fists on the podium. "This is not a joke. The Galactic Council must decide whether the humans should be removed from military operations entirely." A hush fell over the room. The word "removed" carried a very particular weight in interstellar politics. It could mean anything from "we fire them" to "we fire at them." Doug sighed. All right. Let's just cut to the part where you guys try to prove humans suck at fighting, and then you panic when you realize we don't." Zorgath bristled. "A test, then. You shall participate in the sniper trial." Doug shrugged. "Yeah, sure. What's the catch?" An aide whispered into Zorgath's ear. The lizardman's grin grew wider. "Ah, yes. Your weapon will be a malfunctioning, jury-rigged rifle from a defunct civilization. Your target will be a moving, high-speed drone. And—" Zorgath paused for effect. "You shall have only one shot." Doug rolled his toothpick to the other side of his mouth. "So? Just another Tuesday then?" A few minutes later, Doug stood on a high balcony overlooking a target range designed to be impossible. The drone was sleek, fast, and equipped with countermeasures to disrupt aim. The rifle they gave him was practically held together with duct tape and bad decisions. He exhaled, adjusted his grip, and squeezed the trigger. Click. Nothing happened. Doug frowned, smacked the side of the rifle, and tried again. Click. Still nothing. The crowd began to murmur. Zorgath sneered. Ha! You see, the famed human marksman is helpless without— Doug sighed, flipped the rifle upside down, grabbed it like a club and threw it. The malfunctioning rifle tumbled through the air, bounced off a rock, ricocheted off a nearby railing, hit the drone at just the right angle to send it spiraling into the main council's refreshment table. The council president's drink was knocked over, a silence so thick it could smother. A black hole filled the chamber. The drone, now sparking and smoking, let out a weak beep before exploding. Zorgath's mouth opened and closed like a broken animatronic. What? But how? Doug stretched, popping his shoulders. Yeah, I'm gonna need a new rifle. The room promptly descended into chaos. Some aliens fainted. Others ran in circles trying to process what they had just witnessed. One particularly— Old Diplomat began drafting a new war doctrine on a napkin, muttering to himself about countering human nonsense. Zorgath, trembling, turned back to the screen. Data was rapidly updating. The rankings of Galactic snipers flashed before him. Doug Harrington had just taken the number 2 spot. Above him, in the number 1 slot, was another human. A name flickered onto the screen. Vasquez. Zorgath. Immediately vomited into a trash can. Doug yawned and adjusted his hat. So, lunch break? Zorgath was hyperventilating into a paper bag. The entire Galactic Council chamber had erupted into what could only be described as bureaucratic chaos. Alien representatives from dozens of species argued over newly updated war doctrines. Generals were having existential crises, and a team of analysts was running statistical probability models that, for some reason, kept returning an error message that simply read, "No logical explanation found." In the midst of this interstellar meltdown, Sergeant Major Doug "Deadshot" Harrington stood at the center of the storm, sipping a cup of alien coffee. It was far too weak for his taste, but he wasn't about to start an interspecies incident over bad caffeine. Zorgath, still pale under his greenish scales, slammed his fist onto the data console. "This is impossible!" he screeched. "Humans are not strategically competent. They do not have the discipline. They do not follow orders." Doug glanced up from his coffee. "Oh yeah, we don't follow orders. That's how we win." Zorgath's eye twitched violently. The council president, a gelatinous being known as High Chairman Ulbrichts, gurgled in frustration. "Enough of this madness! We must take immediate action!" The hall fell silent as Ulbrichts turned to a row of war analysts, each furiously typing into holographic consoles. "Explain," the chairman demanded. "How exactly did this human, this maniac, defeat our impossible test?" The lead analyst, a nervous-looking squid-like creature named Professor Zilvaz, adjusted its thick glasses and hesitated. We have analyzed the footage frame by frame," Zilvaz said. "The human, Sergeant Major Harrington, threw the rifle in a manner that should have been statistically irrelevant. And yet, the trajectory was perfect." "Perfect?" Zorgath barked. "It bounced off a rock." Zilvaz gulped. Yes, that is what we are struggling to understand. The ricochet angle, the force, the exact timing, it should not have worked. In fact, based on our models, that outcome was less likely than a quantum anomaly spontaneously creating a second moon for this planet. Doug smirked. "Sounds about right." Ulbrichts trembled. "Are you saying that the human calculated the bounce?" The show. Room tensed. All eyes turned to Doug. Doug tilted his head as if considering the question, before shrugging. "Nah, I just got lucky." The chamber erupted into sheer panic. Entire species lost faith in the concept of probability itself. Zorgath clutched his chest, trying not to faint. Zilvaz sat down and whispered, "Luck is not a military strategy. Over and over again, as if saying it would make it true. The IGN High Chairman smacked the podium. Enough! His gelatinous mass jiggled with authority. We cannot allow the humans to continue destabilizing intergalactic military doctrine. We must prove that their success is a fluke. Zorgath, seizing the opportunity to reclaim his dignity, straightened his uniform. Yes, precisely. A single test is not enough. We must conduct a full-scale war simulation. Ulbrichts pointed at Doug. Sergeant Major, you shall be placed in command of a human strike team. You will go up against a highly trained, mathematically optimized, entirely logical alien special forces unit. Let's see if your ridiculous, chaotic methods hold up when faced with true discipline. Doug yawned. All right, but can I pick my team? Zorgath frowned. What? No! You shall be assigned. Yeah, I'm picking my team. The council argued amongst themselves for a moment before grudgingly agreeing. Fine, Ulbrichts grumbled. But do not think for a second that this will be anything but a decisive humiliation for humanity. Doug grinned. Yeah. Just make sure you stock the victory bar with decent whiskey. 2 hours later, the simulation battlefield was a holographic war zone projected over a massive lunar surface in orbit above the Council's capital world. It had been meticulously designed to replicate real-world combat conditions, obstacles, shifting weather patterns, and even simulated environmental hazards like unstable terrain. On one side, the Galactic Special Forces, an elite coalition of hand-picked soldiers from the most prestigious alien military academies. They moved in perfect formation, their armor gleaming, their weapons synchronized to a level that would make a choreographed dance team jealous. On the other side stood Doug's team. To say it was a ragtag group would be an understatement. There was Vasquez, the legendary #1 ranked human marksman, who was currently finishing a sandwich. Private First Class Jenkins, a demolitions expert who was, for some reason, setting up explosives before the match even started. Lieutenant Mad Dog Kowalski, who had entered the simulation shirtless and was flexing aggressively at the enemy team. And finally, Corporal Donahue, who had shown up in flip-flops. Zorgath, watching from the high command station, turned to Ulbrichts and whispered, "They aren't even taking this seriously." Doug pulled out a cigar. "All right, team, listen up. The enemy has precision tactics, superior tech, and probably an actual plan. So, naturally, we're gonna wing it." Vasquez took a bite of his sandwich. "So, business as usual?" "Pretty much." The simulation countdown began. 3, 2, 1. Start! Instantly, the alien team spread out in perfect formations, covering every possible angle, adjusting their positions based on real-time strategy calculations. Doug's team? Jenkins blew up his own starting position within the first 3 seconds. Kowalski charged directly at the enemy, screaming, "America!" despite the fact that Earth wasn't even in America. Donahue tripped over a rock, but somehow managed to fire a shot while falling that hit an enemy sniper in the head. Vasquez sighed, finished his sandwich, then casually eliminated 5 enemies with a single shot. The alien forces, meticulously, trained in perfect efficiency, found themselves utterly incapable of responding to whatever the humans were doing. They attempted to adapt, but every logical maneuver was met with absolute nonsense. Jenkins, laughing maniacally, had rigged an enemy stronghold to collapse, using nothing but duct tape and a bag of loose screws. Doug, casually sitting behind, cover, took out an enemy without even looking at them. And Kowalski? Kowalski punched a tank so hard it flipped over. By the time the simulation ended, half the alien forces were unconscious, stuck in holes, or just plain quitting out of sheer frustration. Doug, lighting his cigar, stood over the holographic wreckage. "All right, let's wrap this up. Vasquez, hit the final objective." Vasquez nodded, aimed at a distant target, and fired. The bullet ricocheted off a wall, bounced off a drone, spun through an air vent, and hit the enemy command console. Victory. For the humans. Silence. Pure, unfiltered horror filled the command center. Zorgath was frozen. Ulbrix was turning an alarming shade of purple. Zilvaz had simply left the room. Doug leaned into the microphone. So, you guys want to admit, we're good at war, or are we doing another round? Zorgath feinted. The Galactic Council chamber was in complete disarray. Alien diplomats were arguing, strategists were hyperventilating, and someone in the corner had begun scribbling on a whiteboard in sheer desperation, trying to mathematically disprove what had just happened. No one could believe it. No one wanted to believe it. And yet, there it was. Humans had won. Again. And this time, they had done it while actively sabotaging themselves. Sergeant Major Doug Deadshot Harrington leaned back in his chair, hands behind his head, looking deeply amused. His team, equally relaxed, sat around the chamber with the kind of energy usually reserved for an after-work happy hour. Kowalski was flexing for no reason. Jenkins was tossing a grenade in the air like a stress ball, and Vasquez, still ranked the #1 sniper in the galaxy, was finishing what had to be his 4th sandwich of the day. Across from them, Zorgath, the Magnificent, had his claws buried in his own face. He had been staring at the simulation results for an uncomfortable amount of time, muttering incoherently. "This cannot be happening," Zorgath whispered, his voice brittle with desperation. You didn't even follow a plan." Doug shrugged. Plans are just really complicated ways of telling your enemy what you're about to do. Zorgath's claws clenched. "You don't just ignore battle plans. Strategy is everything. You can't win wars through brute force and dumb luck." Doug pointed to Vasquez. "Tell him about the time you took out a tank with a spoon." Vasquez swallowed his bite and nodded solemnly. "It was a really good spoon." Zorgath twitched violently. Council President Ulbrich slammed his gelatinous fist on the podium, his patience having reached its absolute limit. "Enough. The incompetence of our military forces against the humans is deeply unacceptable, but we still have one final measure." The room fell silent. Ulbrich's many eyes locked onto Doug with a look that could curdle milk. "The Perfection Protocol." The chamber gasped. Even Doug raised an eyebrow. "Sounds fancy." Zorgath, regaining some of his composure, nodded eagerly. Yes, of course. The Perfection Protocol. The pinnacle of tactical perfection." He turned to Doug, grinning with something that could only be described as malicious hope. "You see, Sergeant Major, our galaxy's greatest minds have spent centuries refining military strategy down to its absolute mathematical perfection. We created an artificial intelligence, one that knows every possible battle outcome, every formation, every tactical maneuver in existence." Zorgath's eyes gleamed. "It has never been defeated." Doug sipped his alien coffee. "Let me guess. You want me to fight it?" Ulbrich's gelatinous form rippled. "You will face the Perfection Protocol in a real-world combat scenario. And when you fail, as you inevitably will, we will finally have proof that humans are nothing but reckless, untrained lunatics." Doug took a moment to consider this. Then, he turned to Vasquez. "Thoughts?" Vasquez wiped his hands on his uniform. "Do we get paid for this?" Doug looked at Ulbrich. "Do we get paid for this?" Ulbrich twitched. "This is not a mercenary contract, you deranged ape." Doug shrugged. "Fine, we'll do it for the bragging rights." Zorgath's smug grin widened. "Good, because this time, your little tricks won't work." Doug grinned back. "Buddy, I don't do tricks. I just do." The Perfection Protocol's warship was a monstrosity, a sleek, jet-black construct of pure, calculated lethality. Its very presence seemed to hum with intelligence. It was rumored to process 1 billion combat simulations per second. It had single-handedly obliterated entire fleets with nothing but predictive tactics. And today, it was up against Doug. Doug stood aboard the oldest, most outdated human dropship in the fleet. leaning against the rusted walls while the AI on board sputtered and barely kept itself functional. He could already hear the voice of the perfection protocol through the comms. Human unit detected. Analyzing. Strategic profile identified. Error. No logical combat style found. Reclassifying. Error. Reclassifying. Error. Doug glanced at Jenkins. Sounds like it's having a rough day already. Jenkins chuckled, double-checking his explosives. Poor thing's never had to fight a wild card before. Vasquez loaded his sniper rifle. So what's the plan, boss? Doug cracked his neck. Easy. We annoy it until it explodes. The ship's AI coughed. I'm sorry, did you say? Doug cut it off. Jenkins, Kowalski, you're on distractions. Vasquez, you find a perch and wait. I'll see if I can piss off the smartest warship in the galaxy. Kowalski grinned. Finally, a mission that plays to my strengths. The human dropship soared toward the enemy vessel. Alarms blared. The perfection protocol's voice crackled again. Preparing countermeasures. Engaging combat formation. Alpha. Jenkins tossed a wrench out of the airlock. The AI paused. What was that? Jenkins threw another wrench. Why? Kowalski hurled an entire chair. Error. Error. Why are you throwing random objects? Doug smirked. Keep it confused, boys. The AI attempted to calculate. It analyzed every possibility. It optimized. It reran war doctrine after war doctrine, but nothing accounted for sheer chaotic nonsense. Doug kicked open a hatch, jumped onto the enemy ship mid-flight, and fired his sniper rifle sideways. The bullet ricocheted 5 times and destroyed the primary defense turret. Error. Does not compute. Vasquez, miles away, casually took a buy shot. It bounced off an asteroid, a piece of debris, and through the ship's bridge window. How? Stop. Stop doing that. Doug, now standing on the hull of the warship, lit a cigar. Hey, Tin Can, ever heard of vibes-based combat? What is vibes-based combat? Doug smiled. This. He pulled a grenade, threw it into an exhaust vent, and walked away without looking back. The AI's final words? I hate humans. And then it exploded. Back at the Galactic Council, Zorgath stared at the aftermath. His face was blank. His soul was gone. Doug, walking back into the chamber, cracked his knuckles. Welp, that's that. Ulbrichts twitched. You destroyed the most advanced war AI in the galaxy? With random stupidity? Doug stretched. I prefer to call it creativity. Zorgath, hollow-eyed, whispered, Are all humans like this? Doug clapped Vasquez on the back. Nah, some are even worse. Zorgath fainted. Doug took a sip of coffee. So, where's my vacation? The Galactic Council chamber was silent. Not just the normal silence of contemplation or hesitation, but the deep, existential silence of an entire room full of beings questioning their entire understanding of warfare, the cosmos, and possibly reality itself. Zorgath was still unconscious, his massive lizard body sprawled out across the floor like a defeated rug. High Chairman Ulbrichts had stopped rippling and was now just a quivering, gelatinous blob of shock. The various alien delegates stared at the screens that had displayed the utter annihilation of the Perfection Protocol, an AI so advanced it had been considered the final solution to all galactic warfare. It had lasted 7 minutes against a team of underpaid human soldiers, 2 of whom had spent most of the fight eating snacks. Sergeant Major Doug Deadshot Harrington, the man responsible for said annihilation, stood with his arms crossed, casually chewing on the same toothpick he'd had in his mouth since the beginning of this ridiculous hearing. Next to him, Vasquez leaned against a chair, scrolling through what appeared to be an intergalactic fantasy football league. Jenkins was casually reassembling an explosive device on the council floor. Kowalski? Kowalski was arm-wrestling a 4-armed reptilian guard at the side of the room, and winning. The High Chairman, still vibrating with the tension of a leader whose entire worldview had been shattered, finally spoke. This is unacceptable. Doug raised an eyebrow. Buddy, I just single-handedly proved your entire military doctrine is garbage. You should be thanking me. Ulbricht trembled. You destroyed the greatest AI war machine ever constructed.
You didn't just defeat it, you broke its mind. It spent its last moments begging you to stop being so unpredictable.
That is not how war is supposed to work, Doug shrugged. Look, all I did was give it an existential crisis. Not my fault it couldn't handle the human experience, the council murmured. The various species, many of whom had been horrifically confident in their tactical superiority over humanity, now looked deeply uneasy. Whispers spread like wildfire. They fight without logic. They disregard standard formations. They weaponize luck. One of them punched a tank. Doug rolled his eyes. All right, let's cut to the chase. What now? Ulbricht attempted to compose himself. Now? Now we must deliberate. Doug sighed. Oh, come on. After everything we just proved, you're still dragging this out? Zorgoth, who had finally regained consciousness, groaned. You humans are a menace. He rubbed his head. You must have weaknesses. You must. No species can be this. He gestured wildly at Doug's team. This. Doug smirked. Oh, sure, we've got weaknesses. Terrible at bureaucracy, for one. Ulbricht hesitated. You admit to inefficiency? Absolutely. Ever seen human paperwork? Takes 3 months just to approve a toaster. Zorgoth's eyes narrowed. Then perhaps your military strength is a trade-off. Your species thrives in war, but you fail at governance. Doug grinned. Oh, we're not bad at governance, we just don't like it. Zorgoth hesitated. Then what do humans want? What is your grand objective? Conquest? Expansion? Doug turned to his team. What do we want, guys? Jenkins. Better coffee rations. Vasquez. Paid vacation. Kowalski. To be left alone until there's a war. Doug nodded. Yeah, that about sums it up. The council reeled at the simplicity of it. You are telling me, Ulbricht said, voice trembling, that your kind has achieved military dominance over the galaxy simply because you're too lazy to do anything else until absolutely necessary? Doug blew out a breath. Yeah, that sounds right. A moment of pure, agonizing silence. Then Zorgoth slammed both fists on the podium. We have to ally with them. The council gasped. Ulbricht turned to Zorgoth, horrified. Have you gone completely mad? No. Zorgoth's eyes were wild. You don't understand. If we fight them, we will lose. If we banish them, someone else will hire them and we will lose. He pointed directly at Doug. If we do not secure an alliance with humanity immediately, we are guaranteeing that at some point in the future, we will be staring down a sniper scope held by one of them. The room went cold. Zorgoth continued. We are obligated to make the humans our allies. We must integrate them into the Galactic Defense Forces. We must ensure that whatever their insane combat instincts are, they are used in our favor, not against us. The other council members murmured in agreement. The fear in their voices was palpable. Ulbricht, after a long moment, slumped in defeat. We have no choice. Doug blinked. Wait, did you guys just accidentally make me the most valuable military asset in the galaxy? Ulbricht groaned. Yes, we did. Doug turned to his team. Guess that means we get paid now. Vasquez grinned. Hell yeah. Jenkins fist pumped. I'm buying a boat. Kowalski picked up Zorgoth like a ragdoll. Lizard man, we're getting drinks. Zorgoth, for the first time in his entire life, had no fight left in him. Doug turned back to Ulbricht. All right, so what's my official rank now? The gelatinous chairman sighed. We shall discuss terms of your integration into the Galactic Defense Forces. Doug crossed his arms. I get my own ship. Fine. And unlimited ammo. Fine. And I never, ever have to attend a staff meeting. Ulbricht hesitated. That's... He sighed. Fine. Doug grinned. Pleasure doing business with you, Chairman. And just like that, Humanity became the most dangerous, chaotic, and utterly unstoppable military force the galaxy had ever seen. Somewhere, deep in the vastness of space, alien civilizations began rewriting all of their war doctrines. Some abandoned their war efforts entirely, others invested in prayer. But the smart ones just started sending coffee shipments to Earth.